Hello everybody, this is John Sheeler. I'm the marketing programs manager here at Just Food ERP. I want to thank you for joining us today for the Farm to Fork Traceability webinar. Before we get started, I just want to give a quick overview. We'll be starting with an interview with Jennifer Spanos, who is our Director of Product Management here at Just Food ERP. With Jennifer, we'll be talking a little bit about traceability in the food manufacturing industry as a whole, as well as the functionality that food companies need to be looking out for when they're looking at traceability software. Followed by that, there'll be a demonstration of Just Food ERP's traceability functionality, and this will be done by our senior application specialist, Todd Austin. So without further ado, we'll start the webinar now, and then at the end we'll save some time for some question and answer.
Well, actually, why don't we take a little bit of a step back and let me introduce myself to the audience. So I am the Director of Product Management. I've been with the company now for almost 10 years, and actually prior to working here, I worked in the food industry. So I do have a food science degree, and I've worked in roles including HACCP coordinator, quality assurance management, and product development as well. So when I'm speaking about these issues, it is from my experience both from the software end of things and from dealing with our customers, as well as from my prior life before coming here. So hopefully you'll find some value out of these questions and answers. And let's get going. Sorry to interrupt you there.
No, absolutely. I'm glad that we did the introduction so everyone knows a little bit about your background. But yeah, like we were saying earlier, in your experience with customers, what is their #1 concern when it comes to traceability?
So in terms of that, usually food safety. Well, food safety is always the #1 concern. So both from a responsibility perspective as well as a regulatory one, we want to make sure that what we're giving to people and what we're selling them and what we're having them eat is going to be safe. So we don't want to put anybody at risk, and we want to make sure that if we do end up in a situation where they are at risk, we can easily contain that. So really the importance of that is not only from a quality perspective, but from a risk management perspective. We don't want to have anything out in the marketplace that could potentially be unsafe. If there is an issue, we want to be able to contain that quickly, easily, and thoroughly. And that's really what you also need in order to demonstrate regulatory compliance. So if somebody is going to audit you as a food manufacturer, you need to be able to demonstrate that in terms of the speed and the thoroughness with which you can contain that risk.
Great. Okay. So for a company that's just beginning to scale its operations, that's sort of the time then when companies are most looking at traceability or how to sort of incorporate that into their operations. What would you say they should be looking for from product tracing systems?
So for somebody that's just beginning to scale their operations, a lot of times they have this kind of thing on paper already, or they've accepted the risk that if they do have an issue that they're going to recall a large portion of product because they just don't have any kind of rails in place to further contain where that product was made, when it was made, what the risk might be. So they should be looking for something that's going to encompass the entire process. Okay, so from when an item enters inventory, so when we receive a raw material from the time it leaves as a finished product. So when we receive something in the door, we want to make sure we can trace the vendor that it came from. We want to make sure that we can account for where it's stored in the warehouse, what it was consumed into when we're manufacturing, and then further to that, how it ended up as a finished good and where it went to when it left our inventory. So you want to be able to do that from both directions, right, from raw material to finished good, and also from finished good back to when it entered inventory. So the piece of that that is nice to have in a system is that you're going to eliminate a lot of that paper trail. So certainly there's a lot of error that comes along with doing all of this stuff on paper. You have double entry sometimes. It can be difficult to decipher what people are writing down. Sometimes you're missing some of that paper. So in a system, you can do it a little bit more, well, a lot more quickly, I guess you can say. And also there's that piece of interpretation you don't need to worry about because it's pretty clear in a system.
Great. So as we were saying earlier, sort of in a past life, as a food specialist in the industry, specifically around compliance and product safety, what were some of the main factors in your system and facility that you were concerned about?
So in the majority of those companies, there was a lot of paper, right? So it's pretty common that people in the food manufacturing industry are still doing a lot of stuff on paper, or they have some of it in something like Excel or in a separate product. So there's always a bit of, I guess, a challenge when you're trying to figure out all those pieces and how they fit together. Certainly from a paper perspective, I remember doing recalls or mock recalls and trying to track down all that paper. You had to go to different places within the organization. You had to go onto the shop floor sometimes and go and find that information. You had to try and decipher what lot code somebody had written down. And it makes it a very lengthy process, and there's pieces in it where you can make a mistake, right? There's a lot of adding information together and trying to see the whole picture. So that was definitely something we were concerned about, was the accuracy, right? Being able to account for all that inventory, being able to quickly find the customers that it went to and being able to notify them, as well as just trying to stick all those pieces of information together. So that was a main concern. The speed is really important, especially if you want to pass an audit. You need to be able to demonstrate that you can do that in a timely and thorough manner. So those things kind of add a lot to the timeline, right? And really you want to be concerned about, or we were concerned, certainly, about prevention. So it's one thing to demonstrate a mock recall. It's another thing to actually have a recall. So you want to have as many things in place that are going to prevent that from happening. So you want to head it up, or head it up at the path, right? Get ahead of it so that you're not reacting to something after the fact.
Great. Well, and that sort of leads into the next question. I think with most companies, when they're starting off with their traceability and food safety plans, they're mostly looking to lead with a prevention first strategy. For you, what do you think is the most important features in a system that would aid in prevention right off the bat?
So there's a number of things that can help. Certainly things like audits, right? So audits that can be suggested by a calendar frequency. So for example, I have to do my GMP audits on a daily basis. I have to do broken glass audits once a month. I have to audit the premises. I have to audit my suppliers or my vendors. I want to make sure that there's pre-operational checklists in place, and it's really nice to have that all in a system that can actually keep track of that and suggest when you have to do the next one. In terms of item audits, right, so there's kind of those general things that are not specific to one item, but the ones that are specific to items like raw materials, ingredients, as well as finished goods, we want to make sure that if something is not compliant with specifications, there's an issue that we don't want it to enter inventory potentially, or if it does enter inventory, we don't want anybody to use it until those specs are met and we're sure that it complies and we're sure that it's safe and of the quality standard that we're expecting. So it's great to have a system that is going to block those things until quality says that it's okay to move forward. Along with that, the other piece is that you want to be able to record data. So we need to be able to monitor things and keep track of those results and be able to identify some of those trends, some of those things that might be out of spec, and be able to control them. Lot number tracking, so we talked about that a little bit in terms of traceability, right? That's really important. You want to be able to trace all of your items that require that, and be able to do that quickly, thoroughly, easily, and minimize your risk there. We also want to be able to track allergens. So part of minimizing that risk is being able to segregate and manage those allergens and make sure that they're in the right place at the right time and they're not contaminating other things. Also small things like inventory picking, right? We want to put some rules in place that are going to has people pick first expired first, right? So it's not enough necessarily to just pick first in, first out. What we want to do is actually pick the first expired first out. And that way we can better control the shelf life of things, as well as make sure we're not using expired product, sending expired product, any of that stuff. And then the other piece is preventative maintenance. So part of most food safety plans and food quality plans have a preventative maintenance aspect to them. So being able to get ahead of your equipment maintenance, put a plan together, have a schedule, and keep track of when those things need to be maintained is very helpful towards an overall quality program.
Great. So you would know this working with your share of projects here at Just Food, but we generally recommend to our customers that they assign lot numbering to items that are purchased as raw materials. Why is it so important to get this granular, and how can the software help get this specific?
So again, food safety, food quality, recalls, all that kind of stuff, traceability, it's really important to have lot tracking assigned. Okay, so it helps you from a number of perspectives. Really, like I mentioned before, it's important to know the entire life of your item. So we want to make sure that we can account for every transaction that that item has been part of. So that way you can identify if there's an issue, you can contain it, and you're going to be able to manage any quality issues with a raw material. So if my vendor calls me and says, you know what, we've got an issue with that, we have broken glass we've identified in one of our products, we want to be able to say, okay, well, that raw material was used in these 3 different finished goods on these dates. Those finished goods were sent to these people, and we need to contact them right away, and we need to know where the rest of our inventory is so we can put it on hold. So being able to do that quickly and efficiently is really important. And also if there's a quality issue, right? So if you see that you have a quality issue that's recurring, you can do some investigation and see that it might be one ingredient that had a quality issue that was put into a number of different products, and you can isolate that. So the importance of going granular is for a couple of reasons, really for being safe, minimizing risk, but it's also important so that you can minimize that window of opportunity. If I want to be able to recall something, I don't want to have to recall an entire day. I want to be able to recall the important piece of that day and not lose as much money, right? So in terms of software, being able to get that specific, really in terms of our software, what happens is that you have to add that lot code as soon as something enters inventory. So as soon as that raw material comes in, we have to assign it a lot code. And every transaction going forward from that will have that lot code associated with it. And that's how we can identify the entire history of that raw material and be able to quickly trace it and isolate it in the system.
Okay. So we just talking from the raw material standpoint, I think we could shift to some other areas in the facility that you can focus on lot tracking as well. One that I was sort of interested in talking with you about is lot tracking by shift. I was wondering how you effectively execute lot tracking by shift and what the benefits are to that.
So really, as I've mentioned before, the benefits of that are in minimizing your cost if something does go wrong. So the more granular that you can get, or the smaller a time portion you can isolate, then it's easier to contain that. If we have a lot code that is the entire day, then in the case of a recall, you have to recall that entire day. If you have it by shift, right, or even some people do it by the hour, it depends on what you're looking at, then it minimizes that amount of product that may have to be destroyed if there's a problem, right, or if there's a quality issue. If a customer has a complaint about a lot number that's specific to a time or a shift, then you can target your recall to that specific period rather than the whole day. Likewise, if you know that there's equipment issues during a certain time period, you can isolate less product if you know what time it was produced. So it's really just to shorten that window of time and be able to do a more targeted approach in mitigating that risk.
Great. So this is last question before we move on to Todd's portion. But I just wanted to ask, what steps do companies need to take to execute execute a recall quickly and in a timely manner? And how can they leverage software in this process?
So if it's a raw material issue, the company needs, again, to see every step that the material has been through. So from receipt to production into potentially a work in process item or a WIP item, finished good production, and then shipment to that customer. Okay, so that needs to be shown through multiple levels. So if we have a raw material that goes into one WIP item that is then consumed by another WIP item, that's then consumed by another WIP item, and goes into a finished good, then we want to be able to see that entire life cycle and see where that product has gone or where that raw material or ingredient has ended up. And we need to be able to identify quickly if there's anything that's still in inventory so we can then go and put it on hold. If it's a finished good issue, you need to be able to track it from shipment all the way back to the initial production and show any material, again, that's still at location, in your location in inventory so that you can isolate that and be able to make sure that nobody's going to ship it out to further customers. The ability to notify customers quickly and easily, as well as appropriate authorities, is important. Right? So if we have shipped something to a customer that has a problem, especially if it's a food safety issue, we want to be able to isolate that and let them know quickly so they can pull it off the shelves so that they can isolate it in their warehouse, and we can minimize the exposure. So really software can help with that in a lot of ways. Right? So you can quickly see all your inventory because it is integrated. So at any given time, I can see where that product is. I can see how much is in inventory, and I can isolate it by that lot number. You also want something that is going to do forward and backward trace. So, you know, pretty much with the touch of a button or the execution of a command, I can see the entire history of that item. I can see where it started from, who the supplier was, all the way through to which customers it was shipped to. And it's really nice to be able to do that in a fast way rather than tracing down all that paper or looking at a bunch of different systems. We also want a recall process that brings in customer contact information. So, you know, it's one thing to say I shipped it to these customers. It's another thing to say, okay, take it a step further and show me how to get in touch with those customers. What's their email? What's their phone number? Who should I be in contact with? And then, you know, to top it all off, we want to make sure, and the system has that, obviously, that there's hold functionality. So we can put this stuff on hold and block it in the system so that nobody goes and ships it accidentally, so that it's not consumed as part of a production order. And basically nobody uses it. So they're not going to move it, they're not going to ship it, they're not going to consume it, and the exposure is contained or the risk is minimized, and we can manage it.
Great. That's perfect. Well, Jennifer, thanks for talking with me today and answering all those questions. I'm going to quickly turn things over now to our senior application consultant, Todd Austin. Todd's going to be doing a demonstration of the traceability functionality that's present in Just Food ERP. Todd is a resident expert on all things when it comes to Just Food ERP, and I think he's going to show you some stuff that's pretty interesting and has a lot to do with what Jennifer's already gone over. So Todd, let me know when you're ready.
I am indeed, anytime.
Perfect. I'm just going to share the screen with you now. Okay. And I'm going to change. All right.
Very good. All right. Good afternoon and good morning, folks. This is Just Food ERP. What I decided to do was to actually just start right in what's called a role center or a home page within the application. And so what you'll notice here is I'm actually on the role of a quality audit processor. Just fairly apropos given the topic that John and Jennifer have talked about for the last 20 minutes or so. And so our application is designed to help you manage all of those quality procedures and then of course drive that information to end users where needed. So as an example, and Jennifer, based on her background, would certainly have something to say about my active and past due quality audits that are out there. I probably should not have 150. I really should get to work on those. But the idea here, of course, is that the system is just driving information to me on my homepage. So it's identifying for me past due quality audits. It's identifying failed QAs that need to be managed, complaints that Jennifer mentioned, and tracking those through. It's also identifying completed QAs that need to be reviewed. So a full quality audit module to drive those types of transactions, but to also drive those directly to the end user, so that at a glance, if I needed to see the 20 completed QAs that I need to review, I could drill into that list. I can see exactly what we have done QA on, both raw materials and finished goods that have been done, and I could go ahead and execute transactions on those, actually complete those quality audits. So if I needed to then, as an example, drill into my cashews that have been received, I would be able to see all of the results of those particular audits, and I would be able to enter in or finish or post that particular audit after reviewing the results. So we want to get information to the end user. We want to get that information to them quickly on a home page, on a device, so that they can easily see the tablets or on a tablet or any other application, the things that they need to do and the things that they need to execute. So we want to drive that information to them. Well, how do we do that? So how do we manage all of those things that Jennifer talked about, and how do we get to the end state where really at the click of a button we could trace product through the entire life cycle or the supply chain of your production environment? Well, there's really a couple of key things that we want to focus on today. So the first is the actual setup of your items. So there are going to be a couple of key components. And I'm not going to beat you over the head by any means with detailed setup for today's purposes, but there are a couple of key things we want to highlight to you so that you know why the system is executing and doing transactions as we go through the flow. So the first thing I'm going to do is actually search to a raw material. So these are cashews, a typical raw material in my environment. They get used quite a bit. And what I'm going to do is just drill into the details of this item and focus on a couple of key components. I'm actually going to close a bunch of things down here because really what we want to focus on is right down at the bottom here is the lot tracking or the item tracking component of this item. This is a lot tracked item. We've identified that on the source of this particular item. We've also identified a lot algorithm code and expiry calculations for this particular raw material. So that's a key component. This item is now lot tracked. Anytime we try to execute a transaction on this lot, or sorry, pardon me, on this item, the lot must be identified. It's a core piece of functionality for us to help us manage that end state that Jennifer was talking about. And then, of course, the other main thing is over on the right-hand side here in what's called a fact box. This item has a quality procedure associated to it. And so what we're going to do is just drill into that quality procedure for a moment and talk about the setup of that particular quality procedure. So what this is now telling us is that cashews have an audit on receiving. So that anytime I receive this particular product, every time I receive cashews, these are the procedures that need to happen. So Jennifer mentioned the concept of blocking lots until QA has done their particular tests. So here's a detailed example of a quality procedure for cashews. We require a kosher certificate, certificate of analysis, several other microbial tests that need to be done with mins and maxes associated to them. And this item, this lot, is going to be blocked until this procedure is passed. So we can receive them in the warehouse, but the system is going to generate audits that need to be executed, and it's going to block this lot until we actually complete those procedures. So some core functionality to manage the inbound raw material and to manage the requirements of receiving. The other thing we're going to do, at least for today's purposes, there's lots of other areas within the quality application, but for today's purposes, we're actually going to focus on the two main things, which is the raw material in, the finished good out. So in this particular example, I now have a finished good item. Same concept applies here. This is a lot tracked item as well. So we can't produce this item without a lot. We can't move this item without tagging or tracking the lot associated to the item. Again, it also has its own lot algorithm. It has an expiry calculation. It also has expiry warnings, shelf life requirements, etc. So it's got standard functionality to manage the shelf life, manage the requirements. But then we've also added some additional functionality here to be able to manage that shelf life down to the customer level. So in terms of tracking inventory, making sure the right customers get the right product, we've extended this shelf life functionality to go beyond just the item and actually go to the item at the customer level. So as an example here, I've got a customer card that's showing me these 3 customers. For this item, they will or they need or require a shelf life outside of our standard. So this particular customer, 5-month shelf life requirements ship. Maybe they're in Hawaii or somewhere else where we need to ship the product overseas and there still needs to be 3 months useful life when it gets there. So we have to ship it with 5 in order to make sure we meet that customer requirement. These 2 customers, they're our short sale, our discount customers. They'll take our product with a short code date, but they're obviously going to pay a different price for it, and they're going to try and turn around and liquidate or expedite that product quickly. So when we pick product, the system is going to look not just for the item, but for the expiry date that best matches that customer profile, and is going to suggest those picks and, again, identify the appropriate lots within that. And, of course, the other thing we're doing is on this item, this is a finished good item. It has got an audit on production output. So over on the right-hand side here, it's got an audit for production output. And, of course, when we drill into that detail of that particular audit, it is identifying all the things that we need to capture when we produce this item. Date code checks, metal detections, salmonella checks, et cetera, all the standard types of checks that we would do within the system. And again, we are blocking this lot until this QA is passed. So we can produce the item, we can palletize it and put it away, but it can't be shipped until we've actually blocked, or until we've actually approved this particular audit. And then, of course, at any time, we can always get a view of where this inventory is. Jennifer mentioned we're lot tracking by expiry date, by location, et cetera. So at any time, if I needed to see not just the item, but how much of it, what lot number, what expiry date, and where is it in the warehouse, we'd be able to see that information directly on an inventory overview screen. So lots of information about the lot numbers, expiry dates, et cetera, of all of our product in the warehouse. So that's a kind of a relatively simple flow of information, how we manage those setups so that the system can now take over and execute transactions. So now, as an example, what's going to happen if we really follow the supply chain through, from start to finish? What's going to happen is when we issue a purchase order for cashews or for any other product that requires a lot code, the system is going to now expect and demand that when we receive that product, that we have and that we capture that lot number. And so what our customers are doing is they are actually moving outside of the paper-based realm that Jennifer talked about at the beginning that can certainly cause some problems, and they're moving to a more electronic form of capturing this information. And so we're not particularly big slide people here, but just one slide to give, a couple of slides to give you an idea. Our application is designed to work on multiple devices. So bottom left-hand side, typical barcode scanner for warehousing. On the right, bottom right, iPad, tablet type device. Typically we see from a QA perspective and also some receiving to be able to capture lot numbers, et cetera, on the actual warehouse floor, at the dock door, on the production floor, et cetera. So we can take this information and expand it out so that when we are receiving product, we can receive on a gun and still capture all of the information that we demand for a particular item. So that's it from a slideshow perspective. So what's going to happen is when we need to receive this product, your individual user is going to log into our WMS application. So it's one application, it's written by us, it's one database, one transaction set. So there's no staging data, there's no having to integrate to other applications. It's all going to be within just Food ERP. And what they will be able to see is they will be able to log into their particular application, provided they remember the password that they updated, because it is a live system, so it is going to require password changes from time to time. So what they're going to do is they are going to log into the application, and they will see all of the transactions that they could typically execute. In this particular case, we're talking about receiving. So what they would do is they would actually be able to receive that product into the system. And I'm just going to go to my last receipt date here just for a moment. And now when they are receiving this product into the warehouse, it is going to require them to capture the appropriate information. So on their handheld device, dependent upon the product that they are receiving, it is going to tell them what information needs to be received. So here's a great example where I'm receiving cashews, And when I'm receiving these cashews, I now have to capture the quantity, but I also have to capture other transactions associated to this. I have to capture, as an example, the lot number. So this is where I would either scan or enter in the lot number for this item. Because it's lot tracked, it is showing me that I am required to enter this lot number. I can't post this product into inventory without a lot number. I really can't do anything with this inventory until I capture the lot number and the quantity of product that's coming in. So really that's that first step of traceability, is identifying at the item level that it requires a lot, and then from there identifying all of the transactions that are required. In this case, I need a lot number to be able to pull this item into inventory. Okay, so some simple setup allows us to be able to capture that information and pull that into the transaction window. So once we've received that product, like we mentioned, we can pull that product into inventory. I'm on the warehouse floor. I capture the lot number. I hit post, and that item is now in inventory. But now what's going to happen is those QAs are now going to pop up. So now I will have an active quality audit for cashews. And so now I will be able to enter in the actual results for that audit. So as we are getting the data back, I would be able to open up that quality audit and actually enter in the results of my particular test. So did I do a taste test? Yes, I did. It was fine. It is going to pass that result. All of my other required transactions are going to be here, and I have to enter these in, and until I am done, the 12 results, I cannot post this transaction into actual usable inventory. So I cannot release this product until I am done these particular steps. And they're going to sit there just like other reminders that you would get that would identify for you that, yes, these are the audits that need to get done. These are the transactions we need to execute. And you're going to see that those on your rule center as QA results that need to be executed. So with hundreds of products potentially coming into your warehouse every day, we want to remove the guesswork. We want to remove the having to remember what audits need to be done for what. We want to remove the having to print paper out in advance. We want the system to generate those audits based on the product that has actually showed up at the warehouse. Or in some cases, a pre-receive. If you're doing flour or sugar into silos, we can generate pre-receive audits to make sure that we manage those C of A's in advance of the product coming into the warehouse. So just some standard functionality there. Okay. As we follow through the actual supply chain, the next really, the way we would want to track that is when we need to actually pull that product into, or pull raw material into production. So there's really a couple of different ways to deliver that information. For today's purposes, I'm actually going to, in this instance, stay within the core application and just take a look at what we call a batch ticket or a released production order. So in this particular example, I have got a production order for black salt caramel. Actually sounds pretty good for at least in my time zone right after lunch. This is a production order, and within this production order, we are going to generate pick tickets for the raw materials. So in this case, I'm just going to generate a pick ticket as a work order. We could, of course, do staging. We can do bulk picking, etc. In this case, I'm going to keep things relatively simple and just stay at a pick to this work order type of scenario. But what you'll be able to see is we are going to generate the actual requirements for this particular product. So I want the system to identify, show me the lot numbers. If I've got procedures that I want to have show up as well, it can do that. And so what this is then going to generate for us is, in this instance, what's called a batch ticket. But the important thing to note here, and I'm just going to expand this view out a little bit, is it is identifying the quantity of raw material. So in order to make a black salt caramel bar, it stands to reason that we need a significant amount of caramel. I'm making 4 batches, so it's identifying the quantity per batch. It's also identifying the total. And it is identifying the lot number that should be consumed into this work order. So it is FIFO picking the lot number from the warehouse, and that is the lot number that I need to validate is going into this particular production order. Now, we do have some shop floor control, touch screen on the floor type of functionality that can manage this for you as well. I think just based on the time constraints we have and the topics we need to cover, I'm just going to stay within the core application today. But someone would need to validate that, yes, I'm consuming this lot number, and they would need to then post that into the production order so that we are consuming the appropriate lot that was picked. If we tried to post anything but this lot number, it would kick out an error that that is not the lot number that was picked, and someone would need to make the changes associated to that. So this is how we are going to consume our raw material in. The system is going to generate, typically auto-generate a lot number based on whatever lot algorithm you are using, and now I will have a finished good lot number at the end of this production flow. So we've tracked raw material through the warehouse, we've tracked it through production, we've produced a finished good. We now have finished good in pallets that need to be shipped out. So we've got lots of different items that have finished good lot numbers, etc. When we ship that product out, we now have a full traceability of everywhere that product went. We can track things right down from a customer all the way down to lot numbers. And let me just give you a quick example of that. So what I'm going to do is just kind of go off of the quality module for a moment here. And what I'm going to do is actually go to a customer card. I'm going to just drill into a customer very quickly and just show some of the drill down navigation that would be available to you. So as an example, I'm on the customer card of Costco here, and over on the right hand side I've got some details of their transactions. I can drill out to their overdue amounts and see all of their invoices. And why I'm doing this is I want to be able to show you just where that drill down functionality that Jennifer talked about and that ability to get information quickly is available. So I've got this invoice here. What I'm going to do is actually navigate out to the details of this invoice. And what you'll see is, of course, I can see GL entries, commissions, etc. But I can also see what's called item ledger entries. And from here, I can actually drill into the details and see on this invoice, I sent the same product, but I sent 6 different expiry dates, 6 different lot numbers, and the quantities of each. And I got there from a listing of outstanding invoices in a couple of clicks. So the ability to drill into the details, find lot expiry information at any time at your fingertips, provided you have the security to do so, is really everywhere in the application. So certainly some easy ways to go and find information. But now, as Jennifer said, let's say the actual the unthinkable side of this happens. We actually need to do a trace. We actually have to do a recall. So how would we do that within Just Food ERP? Well, the first thing we would do is we've got a trace button up on our homepage to try and make as few steps as possible. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and we're going to generate an item trace. Now I'm going to pick on those cashews. Those cashews we focused at the beginning of the day. I happen to know that item number off the top of my head. If you didn't, you of course could go search, look up, etc. But once I've identified the item number, I can then look up the lot number. The vendor that called in and said, hey, we've got a problem with cashews, they gave us a lot number to trace. It was lot 23330. I can now drill into the lot and see every lot of product I've received as cashews. I'm going to go ahead and grab the PO number that they suggested. I'm going to pull that in. And, you know, as Jennifer mentioned, we can do forward and backward tracing. So this happens to be a raw material, so we're going to trace outward to find it. So we're going to do an origin to usage trace on this particular item. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and trace that product. And what you'll see is it brought in a result, but it actually brought in multiple results. And I'm just going to highlight all of the things that it brought in about a half a second and walk through the details of what the system has done here. So it's found our raw material, our lot number, the quantity that we purchased. It's also identifying the quantity that is still in inventory. So that could definitely be an issue. We don't want to consume any more of it, so we're going to have to deal with that. It's also tracking the delta between those two amounts. We used 1,108 pounds of this product, and now it is tracking that 1,108 pounds through your supply chain. So 1,108 pounds went into a work order. It got consumed into this WIP item, this lot number. So 1,108 pounds of cashews turned into 116,000 pounds of salt peanut cashew almond blend. Now, Jennifer, as the food scientist, would tell you that's a terrible ratio of cashews to everything else, especially this time of year, but I'm not in R&D or product development. I'm just tracing the product right now, so we'll deal with the recipe side of that later. But as an example now, I've got all of this WIP item. That quantity remaining is 0, so we've consumed all of that WIP. We've taken that bulk and we've consumed it. And it got consumed into another production order. It turned into a finished good of this lot number, of which we made 145 units, and we have 5 in the warehouse that we also need to deal with, and the rest went to these various places. And so now all of this is drillable. So if I wanted to see the detail of this shipment header, I could drill out and see, all right, who is this? Let me expand that out a little bit. Greater Austin Merchants got 5 pallets of this product on this date, etc., to be able to drill in and see that information. So we now have, in about a half a second, a complete record of everything that happened to that raw material. And now we need to execute transactions. I want to block this remaining quantity. So what I'm going to do is drill out to this remaining quantity of inventory. And here are my 1,108 pounds. Here's the lot number. And what I'm going to do is just go ahead and create a QA on that. So we can create QAs directly off of this trace screen to make sure we don't use that product or consume it in anything else. We're going to do the same thing on the remaining quantity of this item. So we've got 5 units still remaining. We're going to drill out to this finished lot number. And we're going to do the same thing. We're going to create a QA on that finished good product as well. So we can execute transactions off of this window to make sure that we do not consume or ship any of the product that has been contaminated, and we want to do that instantly. So if you're using our barcode scanning functionality, it is going to take that into account immediately and give warnings if someone tries to pick that inventory, etc. And then, of course, the final thing we need to do in this instance is actually communicate with our customers. We obviously have some product that needs to be dealt with. We're going to process a customer recall from this screen. And what this is going to do is going to generate our actual recall documents. It's going to capture that information in what's called a recall segment. And so now what I've got is the recall segment that I generated. So here's my recall of cashews. When I drill into that information, I can see all of the customers that were to be contacted, and the system can generate the documentation to go with that particular transaction. So pulling from the data within Just Food ERP, it is creating the Word document. It is populating that template and is going to pull in that information. It's just going to take a moment to pull up my Word document here. But it's then going to generate those transactions in the system. So here's my Word document. On this date, we shipped you this product, this lot number, etc. So there is full traceability in the system. And what we would tell you is that provided you are using the system the way it is architected, lot tracking items, now we are going to lot track those items through the system. Provided you are doing that, really traceability should be a non-event. It really should take seconds to find any product forward or back in the system, again, provided we're using that functionality that's core to the application itself. And I just closed one too many windows there. Apologize. Bear with me 1 second. So that is, in about 20 minutes, a quick run-through of the quality module of Just Food ERP. There's a significant amount more within the quality module. We're managing vendor certifications. We can manage customers' certificates of analysis, shipping inspections, machine inspections, as Jennifer mentioned. It is quite a comprehensive module. We wanted to just give you a quick feel for what the application can do, and then I think we were leaving time for questions from the audience if there were any.
Great, thanks, Todd.
Yeah, of course.
So that is pretty much our presentation for today. If there are any questions, we do have a bit of time now to go over any of those. It looks like we just saw one come in. Oh, don't know where that went. The recording of this webinar is going to be made available tomorrow in the afternoon. We're just going to take it back and make sure it's all edited and working well, and we should have that to you for this afternoon tomorrow. If there's anything else? No? Okay. Well, I want to thank Jennifer and Todd for taking the time to speak with us today. I know I certainly learned a lot. And oh, we have one more that I'm just going to take a look at right now. Inventory on hand was shown per line item. Does the system recap a list of all inventory?
Yeah, so it actually shows on the item card as a view. So John, I won't sort of ask you to give me control back, but yes, the aggregate level of inventory shows as a value on the item card. I drilled down at that level because we were talking specifically about not just tracking in the inventory, but tracking it by lot and expiry. So yes, it does aggregate up as well as gets broken down into its discrete lines of lot, expiry, and location in the warehouse.
Great. Looks like we have one more. How to handle 3PLS or 3PLs in the trace?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So it really depends. I mean, if they're providing you EDI information back on the lots that they shipped, then we would read that EDI data back into our system. So we would simply show that shipment as leaving from your 3PL, but the lot numbers would be identified. I would assume they're identifying the lot number to you somehow, whether it be electronic or otherwise. In that case, we would, we would identify or capture those lots before we posted the shipment. So we treat your 3PL as a location in the application to track what inventory is there. And when they send back what lots they shipped, we would update the warehouse shipment to that customer to identify which lots went out. Sometimes it's easy electronic, sometimes it's manual. It all unfortunately depends on your 3PL and what they're willing to provide back to you from an electronic perspective.
Great. Okay, so for the next question, we have quite a few coming through now. Is this application installed locally or is it accessible in the cloud from any device?
So I can answer that one for you. Oh, sorry, Todd. If you want to.
No. Go right ahead, please.
So certainly it can be accessible from the cloud, basically from any device. So those devices that Todd showed you earlier on in the slide are all accessible. The application is accessible from all of those devices and can be hosted in the cloud, or it can be hosted on-premise.
Great. So we have one more, I believe. Can you show me a list of all inventory line items on hand at a given point in time, not the individual line item card?
Yes. Easy answer is yes.
Okay. That's great. Great. And then we're going to do one last question because we do still have a bit of time here. We're just pulling this up right here, sorry. Actually, that's looking like that's all we have for questions right now. So, like I said, I wanted to thank Todd and Jennifer for their time, and we will be sending out a replay of this webinar tomorrow afternoon.
Yeah, there were a couple of other questions submitted, but it's probably a longer answer than we want to speak to in this call. But certainly, we will get in touch with you for those answers as well.
Absolutely. Okay. Thank you all for attending, and have a great day. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Take care.